And first, I would like to invite each one of you to introduce yourself. I'm sure you'll introduce yourself a lot better than I'll try to. And just tell us your name, your title, your area of expertise, and then we'll proceed with our discussions.
So my name is Coach Janine, and I'm residing here in Dallas. I'm the founder of With You Solution, which is a consulting firm that we work with local business owners and also, with the government in the private sector as well, really helping them to transition. We want the relationship to be really a relationship between investors and also for local businesses. I'm very glad to be part of the team, and I'm looking forward to speak tonight. Thank you.
I have mine already.
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Luca Powanga. I'm a professor of economics and finance and commercialization at the Regis University right across in Denver. It's very close here. And I'm also the executive director of the Energy Africa Conference, which was formed way back in 2008 with the aim of connecting investors to the African continent, particularly in the energy and mining sectors. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Nasibu Sareva. I'm the CEO of the African Development Center. African Development Center is a community development financial institution based in Minnesota. We've just started thinking about expanding to other states, and Texas included. We work within the African immigrants to help them start and sustain small businesses, build wealth, and promote community investment. We do some housing work, financial education, and we are the first African immigrant-started, African immigrant-led community financial institutions with a lending capacity. So we do small business loans. Some of the loans that you've had in this conversation, which the SBA microloan, SBA Community Advantage, we do all that. We are the largest small business lender to African immigrants in the country. I'm here because wear many hats, and I believe that I'm a great believer that if you are not settled financially and other aspects here in the United States, you're not going to be able to actually make meaningful impact in the continent. And I'm honored to be one of the panelists.
My name is Dr. Elvis Ngia, and I live here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I am the co-founder and the president of the International Organization of African Nurses, founded in 2016. The objective being, how do we impact healthcare and nursing in Africa? How do African immigrants who are here in the United States and in other countries come together, put your efforts together, and have a meaningful impact when it comes to healthcare and moving healthcare stuff in Africa forward? And I'm very happy to be talking about this here tonight.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. I am Jessica Cheeks Thompson. I currently serve as acting director for the U.S. Commercial Service North Texas location. We help to facilitate international trade. We work through the embassies and consulates across the world to help U.S. companies export and enter into those markets and to connect international businesses with U.S. companies. And I'm very glad to be a part of the panel.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. So like we said at the beginning, we're going to try to keep it very simple. We will start by talking about opportunities for investment in Africa. We'll talk about the challenges. We'll talk about other sectors that impact investment in general. And also we're going to talk about the specificities of the types of challenges that one may face when investing both here in America and in Africa. So in interest of time, we're going to get started. And the first question to our panel is, what are the challenges impacting the promotion and trade investment in Africa? And I can start with Ms. Jessica.
Thank you. So I think one of the challenges is just being aware of how to do it, what information is available, what resources are available. I think once you have all of those tools and you have access to how to put all of that together, then it makes it at least you can go to the next step and actually act on entering into a market or expanding into a market. I know that as the commercial service, when we're helping a company enter a new market, once we can encourage them, inform them, equip them with the resources and the information that they need, the ball starts to roll. So from my perspective, I think that's one of the challenges, is just knowing how to begin and knowing what you don't know and being able to take advantage of all that's out there to support you in that effort.
Thank you. Just to add a little bit context on that, we've known of issues in Africa that may impact investments. A lot of people have heard in the news about the coup d'etat just happened in Niger. We know that things like this will have an impact on investment. A lot of people will say, well, what's gonna happen to my investment? I was planning on doing X, Y, Z, now I'm stuck and I'm not even sure what's the political environment is gonna be like next month, in 6 months, and so forth. I already started my planning. So we know about infrastructure deficits. We know about corruption, government issues, and this kind of stuff. So, Mr. Nasibu, what can you tell us about these challenges and more so ways to circumvent that, to go around this? And how can an investor thinking and knowing about all these issues can still proceed?
Yeah, no, thank you so very much. What a great question. I think Jessica would have that question should have gone to Jessica, to be honest with you, or Professor next to me here, my brother. So as the Minister of Agriculture said in a previous meeting, in the high-level meeting, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the continent in general, with the head of states, have done really some great work to make sure that there is a conducive environment for investment in Africa. Yes, we have some issues. We have some leadership issues. We have a bunch of other issues. Unfortunately, with the continent in 55 countries, when something happens which we understand that it is a challenge into one of the countries, we get to be lump summed all together, like now you cannot do investment in Angola because of what happened in Niger. So we really have, with the help of organization like what she's acting on now, with Prosper Africa, with Department of Commerce, that actually help to do all the work, just like the U.S. commercial, the organization that she runs. So they actually help to determine as to what you really need to know in the emerging markets into some of these countries. And one of the things that actually, as Jessica said, that we actually don't know is that lack of information, because they not only tells you about what is going on in the on the ground, they also actually help and tell you what are the emerging markets into some of these countries in Africa. So it is a big challenge. There's a lot that we need to do, and I'm going to let some of the other panelists here probably chiming in on that. But I think Professor Pawanga here and Jessica will be the right people really to add some comments into that question.
Thank you very much. Dr. Luca, would you have a few words?
Yes, I think he brought up a very important point in terms of the perception of how Africa looks like. Many people think Africa is a very small country. And as far as they are concerned, if something happens here, it's affecting what is happening there. And that's not true. If you look at the size of Africa, obviously on the globe, it doesn't look like it's that big. And I've asked a lot of my fellow academicians as to why Africa looks that small. And they tell me, no, it's because of the angle, all that kind of stuff, which I don't actually agree to. But if you look at Africa, you can put in, the size is bigger than the US, combined with Australia, combined with China. So it's a huge place. So you are looking at what happens in North Africa is way far away from what is happening in South Africa. So you have to educate yourself about how Africa looks like and where these things are actually happening. So in other words, if you want to invest in Africa, you have to do some due diligence. And just like any other place, you also have to have a partner on the ground who's going to be pushing the paperwork for you rather than trying to do things by remote control. The same thing if you are in Africa trying to invest in the US, you have to do the same due diligence. But it seems like when people look at Africa, they tend to have a different perception on how Africa looks like because of, in the case of America, because of the distance, so they know very little. They would rather invest in Mexico because they are very familiar with Mexico. Even though the conditions in Mexico sometimes, they are more difficult than what you would get in Africa. But to get around that, it's really up to us as Africans, people who have got knowledge about Africa, to advertise or to promote the continent and to educate people about how Africa operates. In any case, you can't even talk about Africa. There are so many countries, like he mentioned, 55 different countries, and those different countries have got different ways of doing business. So it's up to you. In fact, even within the US, if you are doing business here in Dallas, it's different from doing business in Denver. There may be some areas of commonality, but to be profitable and to be running a sustainable business, you really have to do some due diligence.
Thank you very much, Dr. Luca. So
let me add something.
please.
I think as we have these discussions, there are some truths about what's going on the ground in Africa. I'll give you an example. I have a friend whose father was trying to open a medical practice in Cameroon, but ended up opening one in Kenya. Why? They gave him so much hard time doing that business in Cameroon, and he was like, screw this stuff. I'm sorry about my language. And he goes to Kenya, and he's opened his second, the third clinic now in Kenya. That is the reality. We love Africa. I think we all do. But the thing is, there are some places where we have to get some of these leaders to understand that, there's a lot of people who love and want to come here and invest, but we have to make it conducive for them to do so. Otherwise, we are just, I don't know how to put it, it's not good for us. So I think we got to start thinking progressively when it comes to leadership, like they were saying, and it really comes from top down. There are some countries which are great, but there are some others which are not so great, which is the reality. Hopefully over time it changes. It's a big continent, but that is the reality in some places.
Thank you very much, Dr. Elvis. In fact, that just leads us to the second topic we'd like to discuss, opportunities for investments in Africa. And here we know there are a lot of areas, many areas where one can invest. And just to focus, I know we can talk about energy sector, we can talk about infrastructure development, we could talk about healthcare, and I'd like to pause there. Healthcare, for example, we know there could be opportunities for investment in the pharmaceutical industry, in hospitals, in actually the medical supplies, this kind of stuff. So what would you say, because there's really no self-investment, there's no way where you could go and say this is really the safest area, but in terms of needs, where would you start? And I can start with Dr. Elvis, since you started with, that was a good example.
Right, so 20 years ago, the number one killer in Africa was communicable diseases. Now today is non-communicable diseases, cancer, heart disease, diabetes. So if you're thinking about investments in healthcare, you should think about diagnostics, interventional diagnostics. How do we diagnose and treat these things? And you're talking about, like here in the United States, you're talking about CT scans and MRIs. How do you prevent, so catch these things early, intervene with them, and early treatments. I have a friend who just helped open a dialysis center. That's something, you're talking about kidney problems. There's just a whole variety, a whole room of space for investments, and the need is there. We're talking about a continent with a median age of about 24, 1.2 billion people. So there is a whole wide room there from north to south. It is there. The environment is mostly conducive. Hopefully it gets better, but there's room there for diagnostics and interventions. This is not even talking about pharmaceuticals, which is a whole different topic. But there is absolutely room for serious investments in healthcare.
Yes, thank you. Coach Janine, talking about in the same area of opportunities for investments, we know there's a need that's been identified in terms of education in Africa. In general, I'm not talking about specific countries and so forth, but as a continent, that also lacks. What are ways for someone interested in investing in that area? How would they proceed?
Can you hear me now? Okay. So I'm really glad that you asked that question, because actually my company, my team and I, we're focusing mainly on that, educating not just one side, because that's really the perception of many people who work with investors or with business owners. Like, they usually ask about, Janine, so can you come in and speak or train about, how we can be able to make a better proposal? That's not the point, actually. That's not the real issue. I really say education is both ways. I see that there's really a room of opportunity to also educate the investors, but also to educate the local business owners or people who are coming to actually to be able to show the proposal. So to me, I usually see the opportunity to educate both, because it's all about relationships. Relationship is very key. It's not so much about just to be able to see the opportunity, because the opportunity will always going to be there, but it's really about how you can be able to help a company, or you can be able to help the investors to see the opportunity, but also to see the business owner as an equal partners, and coming on the table and really discussing the opportunity for both parties, not just one. So it's really a long work that we do, and I'm so passionate about that, because I want everybody to see, all the investors to see that Africa, it's really different. From each country, you can really encounter so many difficulties, but also opportunity to be able to see what are the results that we're bringing together. It's not just one way. So I really see the education, it's a long journey that we have to get together.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment to
Yes,
that?
please.
So thank you so much. That's a great question. So I'm not going to go into where he went, both of them. I'm just going to go general, because I really believe what they've just said, those are really basic needs, and we are lacking it significantly, and we have our work cut out. But I'm going to go into different other aspects of opportunities. If you guys are familiar with Africa Agenda 2063, I think if we pay good attention to Agenda 2063, which is the 50 years blueprint, a master plan of transforming the continent of Africa into a global powerhouse. If you look into the pillars of Agenda 2063, there is a lot of opportunity that I think we need to pay attention to. My question has always been, at all the tables that I sit, is the diaspora ready? Now, if you look into some of the pillars there, which I was just talking to my brothers here, because he's doing some stuff with the cybersecurity. So in one of the 15 pillars, one of them is cybersecurity. And we have been talking about AIs, which are don't believe we're paying a lot of attention right now. It's just been crazy here in the United States. But apart from that, there's African Continental Free Trade Area. So if you just look into African, because we all know how difficult it used to be, or it is actually difficult just to do intra-trade between countries in Africa. Just the movement of people within Africa, it has really been very difficult. So if you look into just one of the pillars, which is African Continental Free Trade Areas, and you look into all the activities that have been mentioned there, I don't really believe that the diaspora are ready, and the educations and the healthcare that has been actually been mentioned, they're part of those opportunities. So I think there's a huge opportunity for the diaspora to do investment, but as Jessica said eloquently, that lack of information, we really need to figure out as where we can find this information so that we can actually invest. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's very, very good points. And we will certainly ask a question about how. Thank you. We'll certainly ask a question about how Africa can connect with its diaspora in partnership development. That's a question will come right after this one. But thinking about opportunities for investment in Africa, we know Africa is really expanding in terms of urbanization, in terms of growth. We know one sector that's going to be really impacted a lot is the energy sector. So talking about the energy sector, we know about renewable energies, we know about the increased demand in industrialization of Africa. If we're not ready, we may be surprised. So those that get ready ahead of time in terms of investments, these are the ones that actually reap the most benefits. So Dr. Lucas, in terms of the energy sector investment opportunity, what would you have to say? I mean, we know about for example, the type of opportunities we have in Africa, like the sun, for example, the wind, the landscapes, and so forth. So considering all the tools, considering all the benefits that Africa already offers, what's your take on the energy sector investments?
Well, actually, the energy sector investments have not been up to where we want them to be. Because if you see starting from Ethiopia coming all the way down, you will notice that we are so highly dependent on hydro. So we need to have a mix in the energy portfolio, because what has happened is when it doesn't rain for that season, then all these countries have got a problem. And even when we talk about the power pools where you can exchange power across different countries, or if all of them were suffering at one point at the same time, there is no energy to be exchanged. So we need to have there are a lot of opportunities for some people to come in and invest in mini grids, invest in off grids, invest in hydro, in solar, in wind, so that we have a mix. And we also have to understand that most of these countries tend to depend on a specific industry. For instance, in Zambia, we are so dependent on copper. And copper is not an industry where you're going to use solar or wind, because we need baseload power throughout. It's 24/7. So you have to have that mix where if you don't get the power from solar, or you don't get the power from wind, then you get it somewhere else so that you can get the power 24/7. So that's one area. And another area is we talk a lot about the power pools. But if you look at the interconnectors from country to country, we don't have the capacity. So you see that maybe here you are restricted by a 66 kV, and here you are restricted by a 33 kV, which means you can't transport any more than, let's say, 1,000 megawatts. So we have to, those are all different opportunities that we can all look at.
I don't know if anybody else on the panel would like to add to that. Just opportunities for investment in general.
I will just say a lot of investment comes from initiatives. And so when a government has the initiative, for example, if there's an MOU in place, that initiative will then incentivize investment into that country, from my perspective, from what we see with our agency. And so I can see, governments that we have worked with to identify common interests, and we have worked with to identify how to implement a plan to meet both interests. Governments that we are coordinating with in that regard, we may have more investment in those governments, in those countries. And so I think, to say all that, I think a lot of it just comes from the top down in some ways. And that may be why there is more interest in a particular region than another, not just because of opportunities, but a lot of times because of initiatives who's pushing that investment in that particular area or region, from my perspective.
Thank you. Thank you.
If I may add something, I think one of the things that lacks is the actual planning from the government, having an integrated plan rather than looking at slogans. I think I can give an example. I'm from Zambia. Right now, Zambia uses about 3,000 megawatts. And they are talking, oh, we are going to have electric vehicles. Well, if you're looking at electric vehicles, you are looking at having power to charge those electric vehicles. And yet, even though they are pushing all these, we are having blackouts. So the question is, how do you expect to use electric vehicles when we are currently having blackouts? Because for a single charge, let's say you are doing fast charging, or make it slow charging, it uses about 3.6 kilovolts, and which translates into using 3.6 kilowatt hours. Now, if we assume 100,000 vehicles are charging during the evening, all right? And how much does that translate into? You are looking at putting 360 megawatts, which is 2 plants or 1 plant, a new facility. And yet you don't have this power. There is no plan. If you go and ask the government and say, okay, you're talking about electric vehicles, how are you going to accomplish this? Oh yeah, we'll figure it out along the way. No, it has to be planned ahead of time.
Thank you very much.
Yes, a quick one,
yes,
can I add?
please.
So I really like what Professor has just said, because he has just said that Zambia need energy, we need to figure out and go invest. But another thing that I think he just really said is Zambia has copper. We know Zambia, DRC, South Africa, and then Namibia is doing a little bit, right? So with copper, guess what? When we talk about creating all these batteries and stuff, we need to think about actually doing assembly line of this energy in Zambia. So I'm just pushing for investment for Zambia. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. Good point, good points. In interest of time, because we know we are running out of time, we are going to talk about a point that we mentioned earlier today, which is about Africans connecting with its diaspora. And here we're talking about connection in terms of partnership in development. Now, we know there are a lot of, actually great Africans in the United States and, in Europe and elsewhere that could contribute more to Africa development. Now, sometimes it's maybe organizational issues, like what's the best way to proceed, maybe leadership, maybe other issues. So the question to the panel here is, what are the best way to be able to achieve this goal of development in Africa using the experience that Africans have gained in what's it, quote unquote developed countries?
I think I'll go first. I think what lacks is really the organization and the respect that we give to the diaspora. there are a lot of examples. Look at Ireland. Ireland, they even have a ministry of diaspora. So there is real representation and there is real accountability, because that person is supposed to report to the government as to what they have done. And if you find that they are not doing what you're supposed to be doing, you know who to complain to. But in most of the African countries, what we see is, well, this is under the Minister of Foreign Affairs. But if you look at the actual requirements for the Minister of Foreign Affairs, that's not one of the responsibilities. They do it as a side game, but it's not really a responsibility for them. And we have got other countries that we can compare with. Look at Taiwan, for instance, or yeah, in fact, Taiwan is a very good example, and I can compare that with Zambia. When Zambia got independent at 1964, they had about, $1.1 billion in terms of GDP. Taiwan also had about $1 billion in terms of GDP, and they have about similar populations. Now look at 2023, Zambia $20 billion in GDP. Taiwan $650 billion, which was way back then. How did they accomplish that? Using the diaspora. You find that there is the communication between the diaspora and the people in country is marvelous. But in our African countries, we see those who are outside, who are abroad, as enemies rather than being friends. So we tell them, well, when the going was hard, you guys, you left, you went to Europe, you went to these countries. Now that we've developed and stabilized the country, you want to come back and make the money. You see, when we can change the cultural approach, we will be much better off. Sorry, I know the time is limited.
Yes, Dr. Elvis, would you want to add something?
Yeah, there's a lot of variables in play with this question. A lot. But let me just say this. We have to do what it takes. It's our Africa. Complaining is not going to do anything. We can sit and complain all day. It's not going to change anything. We have to do what it takes. I'll give you an example. There's always going to be people on the ground who are going to frustrate you. Guaranteed. It doesn't matter which country you are. You're trying to invest, there's always going to be that person or that ministry that's going to try to frustrate you. It's up to you to either give in or decide that it takes us to change Africa. And if we just give up because we meet challenges, then, I tell people all the time, we love the United States, but people sacrificed for this country to be where it is today. So if you really want to pay that small sacrifice to change your country, you can go that extra mile to do what it takes to make that difference. Because if we just give in to the obstacles and the challenges, nobody's going to do anything. And we're going to sit here for the next 20 years, our kids are going to say, oh, that Africa. No. We have to be the ones to change it, whatever it takes. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thank
Can
you.
I please
Okay.
just one quick?
Yes,
Okay,
Coach,
I just want to summarize in one thing. Actually, everything comes back to mindset. So I think all my brothers and sisters, you guys have said correctly. So mindset, that's something that we need to work on as immigrants or Africans, and also our local business partner on the ground, because we need each other so we can have an agenda, and especially to build the intentional relationship so we can be able to build
And actually, that's the reason that why all of us are here. Because we are doing those things, but what we are airing here is there are difficulties to them, but we are not saying we are going to stop doing it. We will continue doing it until we are successful.
My brother,
Thank you.
just one quick one,
Yes.
please, if you don't mind.
please.
So, thank you, guys. I'm going to echo what you guys have just said. So, one, the mindset. We are immigrants in this country. A lot of us are doing some great things in here. But when we go back to Africa, guys, our countries have been around for what, 65? Is there anyone that has been in independence for 70 years? Maybe Liberia, so, Ethiopia, right? That's the oldest. This country has been what, 400? How many years, 200? You see? So when we go home, we continue to say, been to America, look at how things have been done in America, and you want the exactly same thing to be done in our respective countries. My brother has just said, over 200 years, they brought this country where it is right now. So when we go home, we should be the one who are supposed to be thinking on how we can actually do the changes that to the Africa that we want. The head of state has created a constitutive act 3-4 years ago and recognized Region 6 as diaspora. So it's true that actually we were not anywhere into the African Union. So they've just done it recently. But again, they've left to us to figure it out on how we're gonna continue that work of making sure that diaspora has been recognized. Professor said, which he said it very eloquently, we are one of most unorganized diaspora in the world. If you look into all what he has mentioned, the Taiwanese, even India, Pakistan, the Irish, anywhere they are, from the day they were born, they're Irish. Whether they're in America or they're in Ireland. Look at the Jewish guys. You see, so with us, anywhere you go, we are very organized. However, last but not least, we who are doing a great work here, who are trying to create platforms, Jessica talked about the information, so we didn't talk about, when we talk about these opportunities, how can we invest? So some of us have decided to do some work here and create platforms and make sure that our diaspora actually have these resources. I said we are doing small business loans up to over $1 million to African immigrants in the country so that they can not only be financially self-independent here, so they can have that mindset and thinking on how they could actually invest into some of these opportunities in Africa. But again, it's gonna take us to create the Africa we want. Otherwise, nobody else is gonna do for us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we ran out of time. I would like to thank each one of you for the exchanges we've had, the discussions, especially for your willingness to share what you have in order to better others. Information is really key, as we all know, and sometimes we make mistakes. We don't know how to proceed just because we don't have enough information or good information. So I really appreciate you having taken the time and coming to have these discussions with us. So before we conclude, we'd like to ask each one of you if you could share some contact information, social media, if you have any, so that those that are interested in trying to reach you, they can reach. If you have, let's say, sites for your organization, that could also be something we can show you the audience. We'll start with Coach Janine.
Okay. So again, thank you so much. I know this is very rich, but we're going to continue after this to be able to continue to engage. So you can reach me on social media, Umoja Global Network. That's my platform. And also on all social media, Umoja Global Network, because I believe in unity.
Thank you.
Yes, for me, it's the Energy Africa Conference, https://energyafricaconference.com. And I would like to leave you with one thought for the day of how long you want to think about it. If you look at Africa, look at the northern part, Libya, Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco. All those have got access to electricity 99.99%. Any rural village you go to, they have electricity. You start coming down, Malawi 11%, Zambia 44%, South Africa 80%. Why is that?
Good thought.
I'm not gonna. Prof, I'm not going to go there. Again, Nasibu Sareva, as there, thank you. What a great moderation. So you can find me at www.adc, spell out, Minnesota spell out, ADC, Minnesota spell out, .org. If you go to staff, I'll be one of staff in there. Again, www.adcminnesota, spell it out, .org. And hopefully we can have this one in Texas. Soon we're going to go into, I'll stop there.
Thank you.
The name of our organization is International Organization of African Nurses, IOAnurses.com, IOAnurses.com. And if you click on contact there, you can reach us, and the email is going to get to me somehow. So IOAnurses.com.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting the commercial service to participate in the panel discussion. The commercial service has quite a few initiatives to help to facilitate international trade between the U.S. and Africa. And so I wanted to just share a few of those for those who may be watching or will watch later. Prosper Africa is one to consider. It is a one-stop shop for anyone interested in investing or doing business in Africa, and for companies in Africa interested in investing or doing business in the U.S. Also, we have the Digital Transformation with Africa initiative, and we have the Power Africa initiative. Those are three to think about. Because of those initiatives, we do have resources available. We do have support available to help facilitate trade between between the U.S. and between the continent of Africa. So you can reach us at www.trade.gov. It's a government website, has so much information on there. And feel free to resource that website for more information about the International Trade Administration, the Department of Commerce, and the U.S. Commercial Service.
Excuse me, if you cannot get hold of Jessica with anything that has to do with Prosper Africa and Power Africa, you can also contact me. I work very, very closely with them. I know all the management.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we didn't have enough time for a Q&A session, but we understand that some of the questions that were asked and the response, the answers that they provided, maybe these were also some of the questions you had in mind. So we believe we were able to accomplish our goal, and we thank everybody for coming in and for sharing, for your time, and for everything that was shared today with us. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for them one more time. Mr. Nano, thank you so much. Dear panelists, you can get back down. And you guys were really amazing. This was really, really beautiful. And of course, if you still have your questions, they're still around you. You can ask as many questions as you want. Ladies and gentlemen, this will mark the end of our conference, the Awakening Africa, the Awakening Trade and Conference 2023. Our 5th edition. We're so thrilled, so excited to have you all here from all over the continent of Africa, from South America, from here in America, different states, Chicago, Minnesota, California. Thank you so much for being here in the DFW. It was our honor and our pleasure, and we look forward to seeing you at the same conference next year. Again, please check out our website, the AFB, AwakeningAfricaHub.com. Please check it out, and if you have your badge, you can scan it and make sure that you access if you need information, you need help with your business to grow your small business. We have a hub, we have a co-sharing space where you can, co-working space where you can come and work if you do not have an office. It was our pleasure, et pour tous nos amis du Congo qui sont venus, tous nos amis francophones, nous tenons aussi à vous remercier d'avoir participé à cette conférence. C'était vraiment un honneur, c'était un plaisir. Et tous nos amis du Cameroun, de ceux-là qui sont venus de la Côte d'Ivoire, merci d'avoir été ici, c'était un plaisir de vous avoir et nous espérons vous avoir encore l'année prochaine et à bientôt, bye bye.